I organized a birthday party and invited my family, but nobody showed up. Then I discovered they had traveled together. And then, I should have realized something was wrong when I started counting the plates for the third time. 70 years of life had taught me that when you start doing repetitive things for no reason, it's because your brain is trying to process something it can't accept. But there I was, in my kitchen, checking again if I had enough napkins for 10 people, as if that would solve the fact that it was almost 8 at night and nobody had shown up for my retirement party. 3 weeks. 3 whole weeks I had spent planning every detail of this night. I'm not the type of man who likes fanfare, but after 42 years working at the same accounting firm, I thought I deserved a worthy celebration. I bought the most expensive meat from Henderson's butcher shop. Those cuts I always looked at, but never bought because they were too expensive for any random Tuesday. I spent the entire weekend in the backyard, pruning bushes that were already perfect and hanging those party lights that Sarah, my daughter-in-law, had helped me choose last month. "It's going to look beautiful, Dad," she had said, and I believed her. Sarah had always been affectionate like that, calling me Dad since she married my son 6 years ago. She and Kevin had confirmed their attendance, obviously. My brother Frank, too, along with his wife, Janet. My cousins Tom and Rita had called last week to confirm. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, said she'd come after 8. But there I was, alone, looking at a table set for 10 people and a grill still hot with steaks that were starting to dry out. The corn I had prepared so carefully was wilting inside the aluminum foil. The potato salad that took me 2 hours to make, following my late wife Margaret's recipe, sat untouched on the coffee table I had covered with the good tablecloth. Initially, I tried to rationalize. Traffic, maybe, or some misunderstanding about the time. I sent some messages in the family WhatsApp group. "Hey everyone, did you arrive safely? I'm here waiting for you." No response. I called Kevin. Voicemail. Tried Frank. Nothing. That's when I decided to check Instagram. I'm not much into social media, but Margaret always said it was important to keep up with family life, so I had installed the app on my phone a few months ago. I opened Sarah's profile first, because she always posted photos of the kids, and maybe there would be some clue about where everyone was. What I saw made me sit heavily in the kitchen chair. Sarah had posted a photo 2 hours ago. A photo of a casino, colorful lights, slot machines in the background, and in the foreground. My family, all of them. Kevin with his arm around Sarah, both holding colorful drinks. Frank and Janet posing in front of an illuminated fountain. Tom and Rita embracing, smiling as if they were having the best night of their lives. And there, in the corner of the photo, I saw Jake and Emma, my grandchildren, sleeping in a double stroller. The caption read, "Family surprise getaway in Las Vegas. Kevin organized everything as a surprise for us. What an incredible son-in-law Dad Robert has." What an incredible son-in-law Dad Robert has. I read that about 5 times before I fully understood. They were in Las Vegas, all of them. On the night of my retirement party, Kevin had organized a family surprise getaway and had taken my entire family to another state, leaving me alone with a set table and enough food for a small army. I kept scrolling through the feed. More photos. Frank posting a video of himself playing poker. Janet with a giant drink in her hand. Tom and Rita at a fancy restaurant. And Kevin had posted a photo of himself in front of the hotel with the caption, "Sometimes you need to create your own family traditions. Family, first, Erie Vegas baby. Sometimes you need to create your own family traditions." I was looking at that phrase when I finally understood. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a disastrous coincidence. Kevin had deliberately scheduled this trip for the day of my party. He had organized everything, invited everyone, and purposely excluded me. I got up from the chair with trembling legs. Not from anger, not yet. It was more a feeling of disorientation, like when you misstep going downstairs and for a moment don't know if you're going to fall or manage to balance yourself. I walked to the back door and looked at the backyard. The lights I had hung so carefully blinked cheerfully, illuminating empty chairs and a table full of food that no one would eat. I picked up my phone again and started typing a message to Kevin. I deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. What do you say to someone who just publicly orchestrated your humiliation? What do you say when you discover that your own son-in-law considers you so irrelevant that he can simply erase you from family history with a surprise getaway? I went back inside the house and sat on the living room sofa. It was the same sofa where Margaret and I watched TV every night for 38 years. The same sofa where I held the grandchildren when they were babies. The same sofa where, apparently, I had become invisible to my own family. That's when I really started thinking. Not about this night, about the other nights, about the other events, about the pattern I had been too naive to notice until now. The Memorial Day barbecue 3 years ago. Kevin had called me in the morning to say they had changed the time to 3 in the afternoon. When I arrived, I discovered everyone was already leaving. They had started at noon, as always. "Dad, I said noon," Kevin had insisted, with that tone of voice that made it seem like I was becoming senile. "You must have misunderstood. Jake's preschool graduation 2 years ago." Kevin gave me the wrong address. I spent an hour looking for the school in a neighborhood that didn't even exist, while missing my grandson receiving his first diploma of his life. When I finally found the right place, everything was already over. "Dad, I'm sure I gave you the right address," Kevin had said. "Maybe you wrote it down wrong." Last year's Thanksgiving. Kevin said they were doing an intimate celebration, just parents and children, and that it would be better if I didn't come because Sarah was stressed with work. 2 weeks later, I found out by chance that Janet had posted photos of the dinner. A table with at least 20 people, including friends and neighbors I didn't even know. When I asked Kevin about it, he said, "Things changed at the last minute, and there wasn't time to let me know." There was always an excuse. There was always an explanation that made me seem confused, forgetful, or simply inconvenient. And I always accepted it, because Kevin was my son-in-law, the father of my grandchildren, and I didn't want to create problems in the family. But today there was no possible excuse. Today there was digital evidence, photos with timestamps, social media posts, a public narrative that showed exactly what had happened and when. Kevin had deliberately planned a family trip on the day of my retirement party and had taken everyone away, leaving me alone. I picked up the phone again and this time didn't hesitate. I typed a simple message. "Saw the Vegas photos. Hope you're having fun. The party here was great." I sent it before I could regret it. 3 dots appeared immediately. Kevin was typing a response. Then they disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Finally, the response came. "Dad, it was a last-minute surprise. There wasn't time to let you know. Sorry. 42 years working, 70 years of life, 6 years being a present and dedicated grandfather, and all I deserved was sorry in a text message." I went to the kitchen and started putting away the food. Not because I was in a hurry or because I had other plans. Just because I needed to do something with my hands while my mind processed the magnitude of what I had just discovered. While wrapping the steaks no one had eaten, I wondered how many other things I had missed. How many other last-minute changes and misunderstandings were actually deliberate exclusions. I finished cleaning the kitchen at 10 at night. The backyard was still lit by the party lights, but now they looked more like a memorial than a celebration. I turned everything off, locked the house, and went to the bedroom. But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the phrase Kevin had posted, "Sometimes you need to create your own family traditions." As if I were an old and outdated tradition he needed to get rid of. As if my presence was something that prevented the family from being truly happy. At 3 in the morning, still awake, I started making a mental list of all the family events I had missed in the last 5 years. Not the ones I had chosen not to attend, but the ones I had missed due to misunderstandings or last-minute changes. The list was longer than I expected, and for the first time in 70 years, I began to wonder if I really was as forgetful and confused as Kevin always made me seem, or if there was something else happening, something deliberate, something cruel, something that needed to stop. The following week, I did something I had never done before. I started documenting everything. I bought a small notebook and began writing down every interaction I had with Kevin. Every conversation about family events, every change of plans. Not because I was planning some dramatic confrontation, but because I needed to be sure. I needed to know if I was imagining things or if there really was a pattern. Margaret always said I was too meticulous, that I wrote down things any normal person would keep in memory. "Robert, you don't need to write down that you paid the electric bill," she would laugh. "You'll remember." But now this characteristic she considered excessive was proving useful. Because when you're starting to question your own sanity, documentation is everything. I started with what I could remember from the last 5 years. The pattern was more consistent than I had realized. Kevin never excluded me completely. That would be too obvious. Instead, he created situations where my absence seemed natural, even justifiable. I would arrive late, or at the wrong place, or on the wrong day. There was always an explanation that made me seem confused or problematic. Emma's birthday party last year. Kevin had told me it would start at 2 in the afternoon. When I arrived, I discovered it had started at noon and was almost over. "Dad, I said noon," he said, with that patient tone he used when he wanted others to hear how I was becoming senile. "You must have misunderstood." But I was certain he had said 2 o'clock. Absolutely certain. Emma's baptism. Kevin gave me the wrong church address. I spent 40 minutes looking for the right place while my granddaughter was baptized without me. When I finally arrived, the ceremony was over and everyone was leaving. "What a shame, Dad," Kevin had said. "You missed everything." Emma looked beautiful. Every time I questioned, Kevin had a ready answer, and there were always witnesses. Sarah, Frank, other people who heard Kevin patiently explain how I had misunderstood or written it down wrong, or simply forgotten. I began to look like the confused grandfather who could no longer keep up with family plans. The most insidious thing was how Kevin made it seem natural. He never excluded me from everything. That would be too obvious. He included me in smaller, casual events where my presence or absence didn't matter much. Tuesday dinners, quick visits, things that didn't have deep emotional significance. But the important events, birthdays, graduations, special holidays, those he knew how to sabotage perfectly. On Thursday, a week after the ruined party, Sarah showed up at my house with Jake and Emma. She seemed embarrassed, which wasn't normal. Sarah had always been direct with me, no beating around the bush. "Dad, I wanted to talk to you about Las Vegas," she began, while the children played in the backyard. "Kevin said you were upset." Upset was an interesting word. As if I were a child throwing a tantrum, not a 70-year-old man who had been deliberately humiliated. "I'm not upset, Sarah," I said calmly. "I'm confused. Kevin organized a family trip for the day of my retirement party and didn't invite me. That's not an accident." She was quiet for a moment, playing with her purse strap. "He said it was a last-minute opportunity. The hotel had a special discount and he got cheap tickets. There wasn't time to include everyone." "There wasn't time to include everyone," I repeated. "But there was time to include Frank and Janet, Tom and Rita. Everyone except me." Sarah sighed. "Dad, I know it looks bad, but Kevin was really trying to do something special for the family. He works so hard. He rarely gets to organize these things." It was fascinating how Kevin had managed to get Sarah to defend the indefensible. She's an intelligent woman with a degree in administration, manager of an entire department at the company where she works. But somehow, Kevin had managed to convince her that deliberately excluding the children's grandfather from a family event was an act of love. "Sarah," I said gently, "do you really believe it was a coincidence that he scheduled this trip for the day of my party?" She didn't answer immediately. She kept looking at the children in the backyard, and for a moment I thought she was going to admit what we both knew. But then she straightened up, as if she had made a decision. "Dad, maybe you should talk to Kevin directly about this. Work things out between you two. Work things out between you two." As if it were a fight between equals, not a systematic campaign of exclusion. After she left, I kept thinking about the conversation. Sarah wasn't stupid. She had seen what I had seen, felt what I had felt, but she was choosing not to see. And that made me question. How many other people in the family knew exactly what Kevin was doing, but chose to ignore it for convenience? That night, I called Frank. My brother had always been direct, so I thought he could give me an honest perspective. "Frank," I said, "I need to ask you something. Did you really not know about my retirement party when you agreed to go to Las Vegas?" There was a long pause. Very long. "Robert," he finally said, "Kevin mentioned that you had canceled the party. He said you were feeling overwhelmed with all the preparations." I had canceled the party. According to Kevin, I had canceled my own retirement party because I was overwhelmed with the preparations. "Frank, I didn't cancel anything. I spent 3 weeks preparing that party. I bought food for 10 people. I decorated the backyard. I was waiting for you all to show up." Another long pause. "Shit, Robert. Kevin said you had called him on Tuesday saying you weren't feeling well and preferred to leave it for another day." Tuesday. I hadn't even spoken to Kevin on Tuesday. I was certain of that because I had written down in my new notebook all my interactions with him that week. "Frank, I didn't call Kevin on Tuesday. I didn't cancel anything. He made it up." But why would he do that? It was an interesting question. Why would Kevin do that? What did he gain by excluding me from the family? What was the benefit of systematically erasing me from my grandchildren's lives? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm starting to realize it's not the first time. After the call, I sat in the kitchen looking at my notebook of notes. Page after page of missed events, convenient misunderstandings, and subtle exclusions. A pattern so consistent it couldn't be accidental. Kevin wasn't just being negligent or disorganized. He was deliberately removing me from the family equation. And he was doing it so skillfully that even I had started to doubt myself. But why? What threat did I represent to him? Why was my presence in my grandchildren's lives something that needed to be eliminated? That night, lying in bed, I began to think about Kevin in a way I had never thought before. Not as my son-in-law or as the father of my grandchildren, but as a stranger. As someone who had entered my family 6 years ago and gradually begun rewriting the rules. Kevin had never been affectionate with me. Cordial, yes. Respectful on the surface, yes. But he had never shown genuine affection or interest in getting to know me better. I had assumed it was just his personality. Some people are more reserved. But now I wondered if it was something more deliberate. He never shared details about his life before Sarah. Never talked about his family, his childhood friends, his previous relationships. When asked, he would deflect or change the subject. I had thought it was normal privacy, but now I wondered if it was secrecy. And there were little things that never made sense. Like Jake, my 5-year-old grandson, didn't look like Kevin at all. Not at all. People always commented on how Emma was the spitting image of Sarah, but no one ever said Jake looked like his father. I had assumed he took after the paternal grandparents, but now I wondered if there was a simpler explanation. On Friday, I decided to do something I had never done before. Research Kevin online. Not because I suspected something specific, but because I realized that after 6 years, I really didn't know anything about my son-in-law's past. What I discovered was disturbing. There was practically nothing. No old Facebook profiles, no school or university photos, no record of previous jobs. It was as if Kevin had appeared out of nowhere 6 years ago and simply started existing. I began to wonder if I really knew the man who was raising my grandchildren. And if I didn't know Kevin, how could I trust that he was acting in the family's best interest? That night, something inside me changed. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was determination. Determination to discover the truth about why Kevin was excluding me from the family. Determination to protect my grandchildren from something I still didn't fully understand, but knew wasn't right. Because one thing I was certain of. Men don't spend 6 years systematically isolating grandfathers from their grandchildren without a reason. And whatever Kevin's reason was, I doubted it was something Sarah would approve of if she knew the whole truth. It was time to find out who Kevin really was, and why he wanted so badly to keep me away from my own family. The woman who knocked on my door Monday morning was completely unknown, but there was something familiar in her eyes. She was about 30 years old, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, and carried a folder of documents that looked important. More importantly, she seemed nervous in a way that indicated that whatever she was going to say would change everything. "Mr. Patterson?" she asked, checking the house number. "My name is Lisa Martinez. I need to talk to you about Kevin." Kevin. Of course it was about Kevin. In the last 10 days, since I started questioning who my son-in-law really was, the universe seemed to be conspiring to give me answers. "Come in," I said, offering coffee. Lisa accepted, but her hands trembled slightly when she took the cup. Whatever she had come to tell me was costing her a lot of courage. "Mr. Patterson, this is going to be hard to hear," she began, "but I believe Jake, your grandson, is my son." I dropped the cup. Literally. The coffee spilled across the kitchen table, but neither of us moved to clean it up. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask. Lisa opened the folder and took out a photo. It was an old photo, obviously of a child, but when I looked at it, it was like looking at Jake. The same face shape, the same eyes, the same serious expression. It was frighteningly identical. "This is me at 5 years old," she said. "And this is a photo I took of Jake from Sarah's Instagram profile last week." She showed me a printout of a recent photo of Jake. Placed side by side, the photos looked like the same child at different times. "Lisa," I said calmly, "you need to explain everything from the beginning." And she explained. She told me how she met Kevin 7 years ago, when he went by Kyle Morrison, how they had a serious relationship for 2 years, how she got pregnant and he disappeared when she was 2 months along, how she raised Jake alone, never being able to find the child's father. 3 months ago, she continued, I was at the supermarket and saw a man with a child who was identical to Jake. Identical. I followed them to the parking lot and wrote down the license plate. She had hired a private investigator. She discovered that the man was named Kevin Patterson, was married to Sarah Patterson, and had 2 children. But when she saw the family photos, she realized that Jake was obviously her son, not Sarah's. Mr. Patterson, your son-in-law isn't who you all think he is. We spent the next 3 hours at my kitchen table while Lisa told me everything she had discovered. Kevin was actually Kyle Morrison, from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was 36 years old, not 33 as he had told Sarah. He had been married twice before, always to financially stable women, and had always abandoned them after accumulating significant debts. He has a pattern, Lisa explained. He finds women with good jobs and financial stability, moves quickly to lock down the relationship, marriage, children, living together, then systematically isolates them from friends and family to maintain control. When they're no longer useful, or when he risks being discovered, he disappears. She showed me documents the investigator had gathered, marriage and divorce records, lawsuits for unpaid debts, reports from ex-wives describing exactly the same pattern of behavior. He got me pregnant, Lisa continued, and then disappeared when he realized I didn't have money. I was a substitute teacher at the time, earned very little, but Sarah had a good job, her own house, stability. She was a much better option. But what about Jake? I asked. How did he explain a child to Sarah? Lisa smiled bitterly. That's the cruelest part. He told Sarah that Jake was his son from a previous relationship, that the mother had died in a car accident, and that he had gotten custody. Sarah, being the kind person she is, not only accepted raising the orphaned son of the man she loved, but fell in love with Jake as if he were her own son. Sarah had raised Jake since he was a baby, believing she was helping Kevin overcome the tragedy of the child's mother's death. She never knew the mother was alive and desperately searching for the son who had been stolen from her. Why didn't you try to make contact before? I asked. I tried, Lisa replied. But Kevin saw me first. 3 months ago, when I started investigating, he called me. He said if I came near his family, he would disappear with Jake and I would never see my son again. He said he had enough money to go to another country if necessary. But you're here now. Because I realized he was lying. He doesn't have money to run. And also because I discovered he's doing to your family exactly what he did to me. Isolating, controlling, manipulating. Mr. Patterson, he's not just keeping me away from Jake. He's keeping you away too. That's when I told Lisa about the retirement party, about the years of missed events, convenient misunderstandings, and systematic exclusions, about how Kevin had managed to make me seem confused and problematic to the rest of the family. He did that to me too, Lisa said. In the last months of our relationship, he made me feel like I was crazy. He questioned my memory, my perception, my sanity, until I started documenting everything, like you did. We both sat quietly for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the situation. Kevin wasn't just a man who had made some mistakes. He was a calculating manipulator who had built an entire life based on lies and was systematically destroying family relationships to maintain his control. Lisa, I said, what do you want to do with this information? I want my son back, she replied without hesitation. But I also want to protect Sarah and Emma. They don't deserve to be destroyed by this, and you don't deserve to be erased from your grandchildren's lives. Do you have proof that Jake is your son? Lisa took another document from the folder. I got a DNA sample from him last week, toothbrush when I visited the house. The results came this morning. She showed me the test result. 99.8% probability of maternity. There was no doubt Jake was Lisa's son, not Sarah's. Mr. Patterson, Lisa said, Kevin isn't just deceiving your family about who he is. He stole my son and made your daughter-in-law raise a child who isn't hers, basing the entire relationship on a lie. And he did this while systematically excluding you from the family to prevent anyone from asking difficult questions. I finally understood why Kevin had spent 6 years isolating me. It wasn't because he hated me personally. It was because I represented a threat to his house of cards. As a present and observant grandfather, I would eventually notice that Jake didn't look like anyone in the Patterson family. I would ask questions about the relationship timeline. I would remember details that didn't make sense. Kevin needed to keep me away because I was the biggest threat to his operation. A dedicated grandfather who paid attention to details, who asked questions, who remembered things. Lisa, I said, We need to expose this, but we need to do it in a way that protects the children. I know, she replied. That's why I came to talk to you first. You know Sarah better than I do. How do you think she'll react? I thought about Sarah, my kind, hard-working daughter-in-law who had spent 6 years raising Jake as her own son, who had built her life around a man who had been deceiving her from day one. How do you tell someone that everything they believe is a lie? Sarah is strong, I said finally. Stronger than Kevin imagines. She'll be devastated, but she'll do the right thing for the children. And do you think she'll believe us? With the evidence you have? Yes, Sarah is smart. When she sees the documents, the DNA, the photos, she'll understand. Lisa nodded. So how do we do this? We spent the rest of the afternoon planning. We decided I would organize a family brunch on Sunday. Something casual without Kevin realizing it was a trap. Lisa would come as my friend who wanted to meet the family. In the middle of the gathering, when the children were playing in the backyard, we would present the evidence. Are you sure you want to do this? Lisa asked when she was leaving. Once we start, there's no going back. Lisa, I said, my family has been being destroyed by a liar for 6 years. My grandson is being raised away from his biological mother. My daughter-in-law is living a lie, and I'm being systematically erased from my grandchildren's lives. Not doing anything isn't an option. After she left, I sat in the kitchen looking at the documents she had left with me. Photos of Kevin, or Kyle, with his ex-wives, marriage and divorce certificates, lawsuits, a pattern so clear and consistent it was impossible to deny. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than confusion and hurt. I felt determination. Kevin had completely underestimated who he was dealing with. He thought he was the only one playing chess while everyone else played checkers. But he had made a fatal mistake. He had messed with the wrong family. That night, I called Sarah and invited the whole family for Sunday brunch. I just want to bring everyone together, I said. Take advantage of being back from Las Vegas. Of course, Dad, Sarah said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Kevin said you were upset about the trip, so it would be good to talk in person. Kevin said I was upset. Of course he did. Always painting me as the problematic one. The dramatic one. The one who caused unnecessary conflicts in the family. I'm not upset, I lied. I just want to see you all. Sunday would be the day of truth. The day Kevin would discover he had gravely underestimated the intelligence and determination of a 70-year-old retired accountant. The day his house of cards would finally collapse. And for the first time in 6 years, I could hardly wait for a family event. Sunday arrived with a perfect blue sky and a gentle breeze that made the kitchen curtains dance through the open windows. While preparing brunch, I tried to keep my hands busy to control my nerves. Scrambled eggs, bacon, pancakes, fresh fruit, comfort food that I hoped would soften the impact of what was coming. Lisa arrived at 10, 15 minutes before the rest of the family, carrying an apple pie she had made at dawn out of anxiety. She looked as nervous as I felt. How do I introduce her? I had asked the night before. As Lisa Martinez, a friend who lives in the neighborhood, she had suggested. Someone you met recently and wanted to introduce to the family. It wasn't exactly a lie. Lisa had really moved to an apartment 2 blocks from my house 3 weeks ago, specifically to be close to Jake. And technically, we really had met recently. Are you okay? I asked when she entered. I'm about to meet the woman who raised my son for the last 5 years, she replied. And I'm also about to destroy her life. No, I'm not okay. I understood perfectly. Neither of us wanted to hurt Sarah or the children, but Kevin had created a situation where there were no options that wouldn't cause pain. The only choice was between temporary pain with healing or permanent damage without resolution. At 10:15, I heard the familiar sound of Kevin's SUV parking in the driveway. My heart accelerated, but I took a deep breath. It was time to act. Sarah entered first, carrying Emma in her arms. Jake ran ahead, as always, shouting, "Grandpa!" before hugging me tightly. For a moment, looking at that boy I had helped raise since he was a baby, I almost lost my courage. But then I remembered the photo Lisa had shown me, her at 5 years old, identical to Jake, and my determination strengthened. Sarah, children, this is Lisa Martinez, I said when Kevin entered behind them. She lives here in the neighborhood, and I thought you'd like to meet her. I watched Kevin's face carefully when he saw Lisa. For a fraction of a second, less than a second, I saw pure panic. But he recovered quickly, extending his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Pleasure to meet you," he said. "The pleasure is mine. Lisa replied, shaking his hand firmly. Kevin, isn't it? I've heard a lot about you. During brunch, Lisa was perfect. She conversed naturally with Sarah about work, complimented the children, made casual questions about the family. Kevin was visibly tense but tried to hide it. Several times I caught him looking at Lisa with an expression I couldn't decipher, part suspicion, part fear. After we ate, the children went out to play in the backyard. It was the moment we were waiting for. Sarah, I began, Lisa and I have something important to discuss with you. Sounds serious, Sarah said, laughing nervously. It is, I confirmed. Kevin, could you sit down, please? Kevin had stood up as if he was preparing to leave. Now he sat down slowly, his eyes fixed on Lisa. There's something you need to know about Kevin, Lisa said, taking the document folder from her bag. Or should I say, Kyle Morrison? The blood drained from Kevin's face. Sarah looked at him confused. Kyle Morrison is your husband's real name, Lisa continued. He's from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's 36 years old, not 33. And Jake isn't the son of a woman who died in a car accident. Jake is my son. What? Sarah whispered. Lisa placed the first photo on the table, her at 5 years old, and Jake recently, side by side. This is me at the age Jake is now, and this is his birth certificate showing that I'm the mother. Sarah picked up the documents with trembling hands. I don't understand. Kevin. What's happening? Kevin didn't respond. He was looking at the back door, calculating if he could run away. Sarah, Lisa said gently. Kyle and I had a relationship for 2 years. When I got pregnant, he disappeared. I raised Jake alone for 2 years until Kyle, Kevin, stole him from me and convinced you he was his orphaned son. This is crazy. Kevin finally spoke, but his voice was shaky. Sarah, don't believe this woman. She's obviously unbalanced. Lisa placed more documents on the table. Kevin's marriage and divorce certificates with 2 other women, lawsuits for unpaid debts, and finally, the DNA test result. 99.8% probability of maternity, she said. Jake is my son, Sarah. He always was. Sarah was reading the documents with a growing expression of horror. Kevin, she whispered, tell me this isn't true. Kevin stood up abruptly. I don't need to stay here listening to these ridiculous accusations. Sit down, I said firmly. You're going to stay here and explain to my daughter why you built an entire marriage based on lies. Kevin, Sarah said, and her voice was starting to break. Jake isn't your son? Of course he's my son, Kevin exploded. I raised him. I love him. Biology doesn't mean anything. But you said his mother had died, Sarah whispered. You said you were a widower. I was protecting both of you. This woman is unstable. She stalked me for years. I didn't want her to hurt you or Jake. Lisa leaned forward. Kyle, I searched for my son for 5 years. 5 years. You stole my child and made me think I was a terrible mother who had lost custody. You lost custody, Kevin shouted. You were too young, too immature. I never lost custody because you never asked for custody, Lisa shouted back. You just disappeared with my baby. Sarah was looking at Kevin as if she were seeing a stranger. You stole her son? I saved my son from a bad situation. By lying to me for 6 years? Making me raise a child believing I was honoring his dead mother's memory? Kevin realized he was losing. His posture changed, became more defensive. Sarah, I love you. I love the children. We built a beautiful family together. Why would you let this woman destroy that? Because it's based on lies, Sarah exploded, standing up. Everything! Our entire relationship! You made me raise another woman's son believing she was dead. And it's not just that, I intervened, placing my own set of documents on the table. Kevin, do you want to explain why you spent 6 years systematically excluding me from the family? Why you organized a trip to Las Vegas on the day of my retirement party? Sarah looked at me. Dad, what are you talking about? I told her everything. The years of missed events, convenient misunderstandings, deliberate exclusions. How Kevin had painted me as confused and problematic to justify my absence at important moments in my grandchildren's lives. He isolated me because I represented a threat, I explained. As a present grandfather, I would eventually notice that Jake didn't look like anyone in the Patterson family. I would ask questions about chronology, about his past. He needed to keep me away. Sarah was holding her head in her hands. My God, this can't be happening. Kevin tried one last card. Sarah, please, forget these documents. Forget these accusations. Think about the children. Jake loves you. You're the only mother he knows. Do you want to destroy that? Sarah lifted her head and looked at him with a mixture of disgust and pity. I want to destroy this? Me? Kevin, you destroyed this the moment you decided to base our entire life on lies. She turned to Lisa. Do you want Jake back? Lisa shook her head quickly. I want to know my son. I want to be part of his life, but I don't want to hurt him or you. You're the only mother he knows. Maybe we can find a way for him to have two mothers. Sarah started crying. Not the dramatic crying from movies, but the silent, devastated crying of someone who had just discovered their entire life was a sham. Kevin looked at all the evidence spread on the table, at Sarah crying, at Lisa determined, at me impassive. He finally understood he had lost. Fine, he said, suddenly looking very tired. Fine, you won. I'm leaving. Kevin, Sarah said, wiping her eyes, we need to talk about the children, about divorce. No, he interrupted her. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to cause more problems. You want me to disappear from your lives? Perfect. I'll disappear. And with that, Kevin walked out the back door. We heard his car starting and then the sound of the engine fading away. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, we could hear Jake and Emma playing, oblivious to the fact that their lives had just changed forever. What am I going to tell the children? Sarah finally asked. The truth, Lisa replied softly. In a way they can understand, that sometimes adults make big mistakes, but that we all love them and will take care of them. Sarah looked at Lisa for a long moment. You seem like a good person. Jake is lucky to have you as his biological mother. He's lucky to have you too, Lisa replied. You raised him with so much love. That won't change. And for the first time in years, I sat at the table with my family and felt that finally, we were being honest with each other. The 3 months following the truth brunch were like watching an entire family learn to breathe again. Sarah entered therapy immediately, not just to process Kevin's betrayal, but to understand how she had been manipulated for so long without realizing it. Lisa started therapy too, to deal with years of loss and the complexity of recovering a son who didn't know her as mother. And me? Well, I discovered that 70 years of life had prepared me to be exactly what my family needed, a safe harbor in the midst of the storm. The children's reaction was surprisingly adaptable, as only children can be. When Sarah and Lisa explained that Jake had two mothers who loved him very much, he simply said, Cool, does that mean I'll get more birthday presents? Emma, at 3 years old, was even more direct. Is Lisa staying for dinner? Kevin had kept his word about disappearing. The day after the brunch, Sarah found divorce papers on the kitchen table, along with a voluntary renunciation of any custody rights to the children. There was also a short note. You're right. I'm not the man who should be raising these children. Take good care of them. Part of me expected it to be a final manipulation, that he would show up in a few weeks wanting to fight for the family. But Kevin knew his own pattern well. When exposed, the best strategy was to disappear completely before further investigations revealed other crimes or lies. Frank called me the following week, embarrassed. Robert, I should have questioned the story about you canceling the party. I should have called to confirm with you directly. You couldn't have known, I said. Kevin was very convincing. He made all of us doubt our own perception. How did you figure it out? What made you start investigating? The ruined party was the last straw, I explained. But mainly I started documenting, writing everything down. When you see the pattern on paper, it becomes impossible to deny. Frank paused. Do you think Sarah will be okay? Sarah is stronger than any of us imagine, including herself. And I was right. After the initial shock, Sarah began to flourish in ways that surprised me. She started going out with friends again, friends Kevin had subtly discouraged over the years. She returned to dance classes, a hobby she had abandoned because Kevin always found reasons for her not to go. Even her posture changed. She walked more upright, smiled more easily. Dad, she told me one afternoon while we were having coffee, I didn't even realize how much Kevin controlled until he wasn't here anymore. He had an opinion about everything. My clothes, my friends, how I spent my money, even what TV shows I watched. And now? Now I'm rediscovering who I am when I don't have someone constantly telling me who I should be. Lisa moved to the house next to ours. A wonderful coincidence when Mrs. Patterson decided to move to a retirement community. Initially, Lisa had planned to move temporarily, just to be close to Jake while they established a relationship. But after a few weeks, it became clear the arrangement was working perfectly for everyone. Jake adapted to the situation with children's natural flexibility. He called Sarah Mama Sarah and Lisa Mama Lisa, and bragged at school about having more mothers than any kid in class. When other parents asked confused questions about the family situation, Jake explained patiently, "My dad was kinda crazy, so he went away. Now I have two mothers, and they're really nice." Emma was initially confused about why Jake had two mothers and she only had one, until Lisa gently explained that Emma had a mama, and a Mama Lisa too, if she wanted. From that day on, Emma started calling her Mama Lisa with the same naturalness as Jake. The most beautiful thing of all was how Sarah and Lisa developed a genuine friendship. They made sure to make decisions about the children together, shared responsibilities in a balanced way, and gradually built mutual trust. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings about boundaries, discussions about discipline, but they worked through each conflict with maturity and focus on the children's well-being. "It's strange," Lisa confessed to me one day while we watched the children play in the backyard. "I spent 5 years hating the woman who was raising my son. But now that I know her, I can only feel gratitude. She loved him when I couldn't. She kept him safe. She's a wonderful mother." "And Sarah?" "Sarah says she feels lucky that Jake has a biological mother who really cares about him. That many stepmothers face hostile biological mothers, but she gained a partner. Sunday brunches at my house became sacred. Every week, without fail, we gathered to eat, talk, and simply be together as a family. The children knew that Sunday at Grandpa's was inviolable. There were no last-minute trips, urgent commitments, or convenient misunderstandings that could cancel it. During one of these brunches, Jake asked a question we were all expecting. "Grandpa, why did Daddy Kevin go away?" I looked at Sarah and Lisa, who nodded encouragingly. "Jake," I said, "sometimes adults make bad choices. Kevin made choices that hurt people he should have protected. When he was discovered, he decided it would be better for everyone if he went away. Is he coming back?" "No, sweetheart. But look around this table. You have Mama Sarah, Mama Lisa, Emma, Grandpa, Uncle Frank, Aunt Janet. You have a lot of love in your life." Jake thought about this for a moment. "Kevin was always mad about something," he said finally. "Now our house is happier." It was true. Sarah's house, which always had an underlying tension when Kevin was present, now felt light. The children laughed more, Sarah sang while cooking, and Lisa brought a warm energy that perfectly complemented the family. 6 months after the revelation brunch, Sarah did something that surprised me. She decided to go back to school. "I always wanted to get a master's in administration," she told me. "But Kevin always found reasons for me not to do it. He said it would be too expensive, too time-consuming, that the children needed me at home. And now? Now I have Lisa to help me with the children. I have you for emotional support. And for the first time in years, I have enough confidence to bet on myself." Lisa was also making changes. She got a full-time job as a teacher at the local elementary school, the same school Jake attended. "It's perfect," she explained. "I can see Jake during the day, but not in a way that makes him feel watched." On an autumn afternoon, while the leaves were changing color and creating a golden carpet in my backyard, I received an unexpected visit. It was Detective Morrison from the local police. "Mr. Patterson," he said, "we're investigating Kevin Patterson, or Kyle Morrison, for possible child abduction and identity falsification. We'd like to talk to your family about any information they might have." It turned out Kevin Kyle was being investigated in 3 different states for similar crimes. Other families had come forward after Lisa's story began circulating in online support groups. The pattern was always the same: fraudulent relationships, isolation from family support, psychological manipulation, and eventually abandonment when confronted. "Will he be arrested?" Sarah asked when the detective finished questioning. "If we find him, yes. But men like him are experts at disappearing. He's probably already in another state. With another name, starting the same pattern with a new family. The idea that Kevin was out there, potentially doing this to other families, left me uneasy for weeks. But Lisa reminded me of something important. We can't save all the families he might hurt in the future, but we saved ours, and that's already a huge victory." She was right. When I looked at my family now, Sarah confident and studying again, Lisa integrated and happy, the children safe and loved, all of us gathering regularly without fear of exclusion or manipulation. I realized that Kevin had completely failed in his objective. He tried to destroy our family and separate us, but in the end, he only made us more united and honest with each other. On my 71st birthday, the entire family was present. All the people I loved around my table, celebrating without drama, without convenient misunderstandings, without mysterious absences. Sarah made a toast to the father who never gave up fighting for the family, even when we were all too blind to see we needed to be saved. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my backyard under the same lights I had hung for my ruined retirement party a year before. But this time, they weren't illuminating empty chairs and untouched food. They illuminated the memory of laughter, conversations, genuine love, and the promise of many more gatherings like that one. Kevin had tried to erase me from the family's history. Instead, he inadvertently transformed me into the center of it.